This is Meet the Press with Tim Russert.
Our issues this Sunday, our Meet the Candidates 2008 series continues. An exclusive interview with Republican Ron Paul. He has served in the U.S. House of Representatives for 18 years. In 1988, he was the Libertarian Party candidate for president. Since October, he has raised nearly $19 million. That is more than any other Republican candidate for president. Our guest, Dr. Ron Paul. Then, only 11 days to the Iowa caucuses. The candidates unveil special holiday political commercial.
What really matters is the celebration of the birth of Christ.
Where did I put universal pre-K?
It'll be a really nice fruitcake with a big red bow on it.
Merry Christmas.
The very latest polls and strategies with John Harwood of CNBC and the New York Times, and Chuck Todd, political director for NBC News. But first, we're joined by Dr. Ron Paul, Republican candidate for president. Dr. Paul, welcome to Meet the Press.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Let's start right at the very top, the issues. This is what you have been saying on the campaign stump. Quote, I'd like to get rid of the IRS. I'd want to get rid of the income tax. Abolish it.
That's a good idea. I like that idea.
What would happen to all those lost revenues? How would we fund our government?
We have to cut spending. You can't get rid of the income tax if you don't get rid of some spending. But you know, if you got rid of the income tax today, you'd have about as much revenues as we had 10 years ago. And the size of government wasn't all that bad 10 years ago. So there's sources of revenues other than the income tax. You know, you have a tariff, excise taxes, user fees, highway fees. So there's still a lot of money. But the real problem is spending. You know, we lived a long time in this country without an income tax. Up until 1913, we didn't have it.
But if you eliminate the income tax, do you know how much lost revenue that would be?
A lot. But
over $1 trillion.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, but we could save hundreds of billions of dollars if we had a sensible foreign policy. I mean, if you're going to be the policeman of the world, you need that. You need the income tax to police the world and run the welfare state. I want a constitutional-sized government.
Would you replace the income tax with anything else?
Not if I could help it. You know, there are some proposals where probably almost anything would be better than the income tax, but there's a lot of shortcomings with the sales tax. But it would probably be slightly better, the income tax, so it would be an improvement. But the goal is to cut the spending, get back to a sensible-sized government.
But if you had a flat tax, a 30% consumption tax, that would be very punishing to the poor and middle class.
Oh, I know. That's why I don't want it.
So you'd have nothing.
I want to cut spending. I want to use the Constitution as our guide, and you wouldn't need the income tax.
Let's talk about some of the ways you recommend. Quote, I'd start bringing our troops home, not only from the Middle East, but from Korea, Japan, and Europe, and save enough money to slash the deficit. How much money would that save?
To operate our total foreign policy, when you add up everything, there's been a good study on this, it's nearly $1 trillion a year. So I would think if you brought our troops home, you could save hundreds of billions of dollars. It's, you know, it's 6 months or 1 year or 2 years, but you can start saving immediately by changing the foreign policy and not be the policeman of the world. We should have the foreign policy that George Bush ran on. You know, no nation building, no policing of the world, a humble foreign policy. We don't need to be starting wars. That's my argument.
How many troops do we have overseas right now?
I don't know the exact number, but more than we need. We don't need.
572,000. And you'd bring them all home?
As quickly as possible. They do not serve our interest to be overseas. They get us into trouble, and we can defend this country without troops in Germany, troops in Japan. How do they help our national defense? Doesn't make any sense to me. Troops in Korea? Since I've been in high school, well, it doesn't make sense.
Under President Paul, if North Korea invaded South Korea, would we respond?
Why should we, unless the Congress declared war? Well, I mean, why are we there? South Korea, they're begging and pleading to unify their country, and we get in their way. They want to build bridges and go back and forth. Vietnam, we left under the worst of circumstances. The country is unified. They have become westernized. We trade with them. Their president comes here. In Korea, we stayed there, and look at the mess. I mean, the problems still exist, and it's drained $1 trillion over these last, 50 years. So stop. We can't afford it anymore. We're going bankrupt. All empires end. because the countries go bankrupt and the currency crashes. That's what's happening, and we need to come out of this sensibly rather than waiting for a financial crisis.
So if Iran invaded Israel, what do we do?
Well, they're not going to. That is like saying Iran is about to invade Mars. I mean, they have nothing. They don't have an army or navy or air force. And the Israelis have 300 nuclear weapons. Nobody would touch them. But no, if it were in our national security interests, and Congress says, you know, this is very, very important, we have to declare war. But presidents don't have the authority to go to war. You go to the Congress and find out if they want a war, do the people want the war? But it's totally unnecessary. I mean, that to me is an impossible situation for the Iranians to invade Israel.
This is what you said about Israel. Israel's dependent on us, you know, for economic means. We send them billions of dollars, and then they depend on us. So they, well, you know, we don't like Iran. You go fight our battles. You bomb Iran for us, and they become dependent on us. Who in Israel is saying, go bomb Iran for us?
Well, I don't know the individuals, but we know that their leaderships, you read it in the papers on a daily, you know, about Israel. The government of Israel encourages Americans to go into Iran, and people. I don't think that's top secret that the government of Israel.
That the government of Israel wants us to bomb Iran?
I don't think there's a doubt about that they've encouraged us to do that. And of course, the neoconservatives have been anxious to do that for a long time.
Would you cut off all foreign aid to Israel?
Absolutely. But remember, the Arabs would get cut off too, and the Arabs get 3 times as much aid altogether than Israel. Well, why make Israel so dependent? Why do they give up their sovereignty? They can't defend their borders without coming to us. If they want a peace, they have to ask us permission. They can't. We interfere when the Arab leagues make overtures to them. So I would say that we have made them second-class citizens. I think they would take much better care of themselves. They would have their national sovereignty back, and I think they would be required then to have a stronger economy because they would have to pay their own bills.
You talked about September 11th in one of the Republican debates back in May, and this is what you said.
They don't come here to attack us because we're rich and we're free. They come and they attack us because we're over there.
Because we're over there. Then you added this on Tuesday. But Al-Qaeda has determination. The determination comes from being provoked. How have we, the United States, provoked Al-Qaeda?
Well, read what the ringleader says. Read what Osama bin Laden said. We had a base, you know, in Saudi Arabia. That was an affront to their religion. That was blasphemy as far as they were concerned. We were bombing Iraq for 10 years. We've interfered in Iran since 1953. Our CIA has been involved in the overthrow of their governments. We're right now in the process of overthrowing that nation. We side more with Israel than Pakistan, and they get annoyed with this. How would we react if we were on their land, if they were on our land? We would be very annoyed, and we'd be fighting mad.
So under your doctrine, if we did not have troops in the Middle East, they would leave us alone?
Not immediately, because they'd have to believe us, but what would happen is the incentive for Osama bin Laden to recruit suicide terrorists would disappear. Once we left Lebanon in the early 80s, the French and Americans and Israelis left Lebanon, suicide terrorism virtually stopped, just like that. But while we were there, that was suicide terrorism killed our Marines, because we were in Lebanon. So we have to understand that. We have to understand how we would react if some country did to us exactly what we do to them. And then we might have a better understanding of their motivation, why somebody would join the Al-Qaeda. Since we've been over there, Al-Qaeda has more members now than they did before 9/11. They probably had a couple hundred before 9/11.
It sounds like you think that the problem is Al-Qaeda. The problem is the United States, not Al-Qaeda.
No, it's both. It's both. Al-Qaeda becomes violent. It's sort of like if you step in a snake pit and you get bit. You know, who caused the trouble? Because you stepped in the snake pit or because snakes bite you? So I think you have to understand both. But why produce the incentive for these violent, vicious thugs to want to come here and kill us?
Do you think there's an ideological struggle that Islamic fascists want to take over the world?
Oh, I think some, just like the West has wanted to do that all the time. Look at the way they look at us. I mean, we're in 130 countries. We have 700 bases. How do you think they propose that to their people? What does America want?